Meat Aisle Meditations. This is how I went from a vegan who just didn't take part in animal brutality to a vegan who now gets angry. And I truly believe that every vegan should be angry. Every time I went to the grocery store or just I drove past McDonald's or was in the drive-through line at a fast food restaurant, I always made sure to notice how the animal products were just rampant throughout the menus. These animals on grocery store shelves, most of the products you find on the shelves have their byproducts in them. And I just continue to do this and do this and do this. It's like meditation. When you meditate, when you first start out, it's like, why are you doing this? This doesn't make sense. I feel like I'm just sitting here, like, what's the point? But the more and more you do it, the more you start to come to an understanding. And that's what this is. You are meditating on the suffering and the tangible proof of the suffering. You are constantly reminding yourself to not forget. Every time you go to the grocery store, you look at the shelves at the back, covered in the chopped up mutilated bodies of animals, and you think of the slaughterhouse and how they got there. And when you look at a pack of chicken wings, you remind yourself how those wings used to be attached to somebody. And then you imagine you imagine there's a pack of dog tails. What's the difference? What is the significant difference? Please explain to me, somebody, because I still don't understand. What is the significant difference that allows us to fill up shelves of cows' puss-filled titty juice, but we don't harvest our own milk from humans and put those on the shelves? Why has it got to be from cows? If we want to keep drinking breast milk in our adult years, why not just get it from our own species? Wouldn't that make more sense? Barring the human rights, put that aside, why would they now go and get it from a different species? Why cows of all species? There's no logic in this. When you really try to argue for carnism and make it make sense, when you purposefully try to make carnism make sense, it falls apart. It completely and utterly falls apart. And for me, I like to study arguments or study different sides. So when I went vegan, or at least plant-based in the beginning, from August to December of 2019, from August to December, I was plant-based. Like I said, yeah, it was for the animals as well, but I hadn't made the connection yet. It wasn't till December until I started to make the connection. And it was just last week where that connection was fully intact in my head. So from August to December of 2019, I was open. I was still listening to the carnist point of view. I wanted to make sure, and I do this with pretty much everything, I don't just jump into things. I like to know the pros and cons. I like to know exactly what I'm getting into. So I began to scrutinize the lifestyle that I had been living my entire life. And I kept trying to hold that up to veganism and hold veganism up to carnism. Little did I realize that I knew nothing about veganism. I was a carnist trying to somehow equate veganism to the abuse and torture of animals by the trillions around the globe. I was looking at veganism through a carnist lens. And that's why I had to set everything aside when I started doing these meat aisle meditations. Go to the meat aisle, you're in the drive-thru at Chick-fil-A, or you're driving down the highway and you see a Chick-fil-A ad with a cow on it saying, "Eat more chicken." That's how blatant they are, because they know what they're doing. They know. Your whole marketing scheme is based off of cows not wanting to die, so go eat the chickens instead. And they're making a joke out of that, and nobody bats an eye. And I had to start forcing myself to notice these things, to start noticing the hypocrisy. I had to start looking at the meat aisle for what it really was. Especially considering that I did not need to eat those edible animal pieces of flesh in order for me to survive. So why is this happening? None of us need animals to survive. We all need plants to survive. If you can't eat one plant, eat another. I find it really funny how people are like, I can't eat this and this and their plants. I can't eat this, this and that. But then half y'all out here lactose intolerant, still gurgling down the cow breast milk. Wondering why you're constipated. Okay. I'm getting more fired up than I would like. But, yeah. Please just, really look at the world around you and ask yourself, why is it that our world is so heavily set up on animals suffering? Because they're suffering. Whether they had a good life or not before you slit their throat with a knife and put a bolt gun to their head, yeah, that's suffering. If it happened to me, I'd be suffering. I wouldn't call that pleasure. I wouldn't call that pleasure. That's suffering. Just because it's happening to an animal doesn't not make it suffering. So you gotta look at the world around you and really start to question what's going on. Because if you don't need, your body does not need for this system to be in place in order for you to survive and be healthy and thrive. If you're not gonna walk around naked because you don't have this system, you can wear other things, but this system keeps producing products that unnecessarily cause someone to suffer. You need to start asking yourself, why is that? Our society does not need to exist on the backs of animals. We can have a perfectly functioning a better off society, a more compassionate society, a more loving society, by recognizing that animals too have a right to life, freedom, and dignity. And how do you think we're going to start treating each other? What y'all don't understand is when you have attitudes in one area of life, it trickles into all other areas of your life. It does. You are far less of a compartmentalized person than you believe. We need to start looking at things as a whole, and looking at our mindsets as a whole, and looking at our society as a whole, and asking why it's set up the way it is.